Author of the original text, Alexander Zhovna. Translation and adaptation, as well as script, sound design, production, and special effects, Savchuk Anastasia. Audio material, AI11 Labs. Graphics, Gemini. Music, Borin and Der Club of Gore. Tief Gesanken and Pixabay.
The most dangerous illusion is to think that you are just an observer. When you stare into the void for too long, trying to find the answer there, it begins to stare back at you. And in the end, you become one, losing the line between the one who looks and the one who is looked at. Stepan Ivanovich. For some reason, the walls of most railway stations tend to be gray and strikingly indifferent. Their grayness and apathy are so traditionally steadfast and independent that even the shifting weather or the turning of seasons cannot provoke the slightest hesitation in their appearance. Now, imagine that, atop all else, this station sits in the remote province, a place where ticket queues form only on holidays. And on a weekday, one sees no soul but the cleaning lady and two mangy calves. Thus, it would occur to no one to argue with you that on a cold autumn evening, it is far better to sit at home on a soft sofa than on the wooden bench of a station such as this. And where were these two young people going in such foul weather? Why could they not stay put? Where and why was life driving them? For some reason, it seemed strange. From the fresh, bright glint of the rings on their hands, it was not difficult to guess that their relationship had only recently been reconciled with the law. Say what you will, I thought to myself, but one does not often see such a face in these parts. Were I in his place, I would not have dared to have such a woman as a wife. Had he truly failed to see through his thick spectacles that she was far too attractive for this mission, and that the world is full of men without glasses who possess quite keen eyesight? That was exactly what I thought at that moment. As soon as you arrive, call Stepan Ivanovich immediately. He will arrange everything. A voice spoke loudly and sagely from behind the spectacles. Well, well, so you're even letting her go alone? Forgive me, Four Eyes, but you are a total oddball, I muttered to myself. The wind lunged under the old tin of the station roof, clattering, rumbling, and screeching, as if some secret manufacturing were taking place up there in the heights. But why was there so much sadness in those magnificent eyes, which resembled the wings of a dragonfly? And where were they looking so pensively? Almost involuntarily, I turned my head, and suddenly, by the window, I glimpsed a figure in a gray raincoat. It turned out that, besides us, there was another man in the hall. He stood facing the window, looking out at the platform exactly where she seemed to be looking. And then, devil take me, I finally caught on to what was happening. The platform beyond the glass interested him no more than last year's snow. Evidently, she felt the same lack of desire to see it, for it was as simple as can be. Their gazes were joined by the dark pane of the station window. Heaven help me. But both he and she were now least of all interested in what was happening outside. Reflections. Only the reflections in the dark pane chained them to the window. Quite a story. I shifted on my bench and lowered my eyes. There was no doubt they had been looking at one another for nearly half an hour. What exactly was transpiring now within the gray and indifferent walls of this provincial station? Did they know each other or not? What bound them? Had they communicated before? Or perhaps they were communicating only now in a language of looks understood only by them. Don't walk late. It's a big city, you know that yourself. I worry about you so much. Four Eyes continued to drone on, rummaging through a bag. But I suspect that, other than myself, no one in this hall heard his instructions, not since those two gazes froze upon the dark pane of the old peeling frame where, besides them, the entrance lamp flickered dimly. A loud locomotive whistle rolled past the window. There was a plea in her gaze as it left the dark pane, but the figure in the gray raincoat did not budge. 2 minutes, stop! A conductor warned someone. I leaned out of the carriage window. The locomotive wailed again. Four Eyes stood by the steps, speaking rapidly. I could see only a portion of her face, upon which a tiny spark flared and rolled away into the darkness. I looked back toward where the station windows glowed. In one of them, as before, a man's figure remained frozen and motionless. All around, the cold autumn night shone with a transparent light. The carriage jolted. The carriage jolted once more, heavily, as if the metallic carcass were reluctantly submitting to the will of the machinery. The platform began to drift slowly backward, sinking into the thick jelly of the station-side darkness. The last thing I managed to catch with my eyes before the station window vanished was the figure in the gray raincoat, still standing there. The man did not stir. He continued to stare into the pane. I felt a slight chill run down the length of my spine. I leaned back against the hard back of the seat. It was unpleasantly damp in the carriage. The light from a solitary lamp beneath the ceiling was yellow and pulsed in time with the clatter of the wheels, creating the illusion that the carriage walls were breathing. Beside me, across the aisle, sat she. Four Eyes had remained on the platform. I saw his dwindling figure desperately waving a hand until it dissolved into the night mist. The woman sat upright, not removing her coat. Her hands, adorned with that same wedding ring, lay motionless on her lap as if carved from marble. "Won't you open the window?" she suddenly asked. Her voice did not match her appearance. It was dry and rustling. She did not look at me. Her gaze was still fixed on the dark glass, where now only my own bewildered profile was reflected. "It's raining and cold outside," I replied, feeling a strange shiver. "Why would you want that?" She finally turned her head. The eyes that had earlier seemed to me like dragonfly wings now looked like two deep wells, at the bottom of which ice had frozen solid. "You saw him?" It was not a question. "He won't let go. He never lets go." At that moment, the train braked sharply. The screech of metal against metal was so piercing that it made my ears pop. The lamp beneath the ceiling cracked and went out. In total darkness, I heard heavy doors opening at the end of the carriage. The footsteps were heavy, measured. Someone was walking across the metal floor, and the sound was accompanied by a strange squelching, as if the walker's shoes were soaked through. I held my breath. There was a smell of old tin, wet wool, and something sweet and sickly, reminiscent of stagnant water from a cellar. A figure appeared in the doorway, merely a silhouette against the blue night sky beyond the window, a gray raincoat. He did not walk. He seemed to permeate through the half-light of the vestibule, becoming denser with every lurch of the carriage. I expected to see a face, pale, scarred, or with a mad stare like in the cheap thrillers sold at station stalls. But when the figure came right up to the light of the solitary lamp that miraculously still flickered, I felt my stomach tighten into a hard knot. He had no face. Instead, beneath the brim of his hat, there was a flat, smooth surface covered in the same gray fabric as the raincoat. No slit for eyes, no fold for a mouth. The woman slowly stood up. Her reaction at that moment was the most terrifying thing of all to me. She did not scream, nor did she even flinch. Instead, she smiled, calmly, almost tenderly, the way one usually smiles at an old friend. "You're late," she whispered. "The train departed a minute earlier." The figure in the raincoat stopped and slowly, with an unpleasant crunch of joints, raised a hand. He held out a small railway ticket to her, but it was not made of paper. It was a piece of dark, wet iron, from which a thick black liquid dripped onto the floor. "Stepan Ivanovich asked me to pass this on," a voice rang out, but it did not come from the figure. The voice sounded from everywhere, from the walls of the carriage, from beneath the floor, from the speaker above the door. Without any sign of discomfort, the woman took the ticket. As soon as her fingers touched the iron, her skin began to gray rapidly, taking on the exact same hue as the walls of the station we had just left. "Now we are all part of this locomotive," she said, turning back to me. I wanted to jump up, to run out, to pull the emergency brake, but my legs would not obey. Looking down, I saw that my shoes were no longer resting on the floor. They were slowly growing into it, dissolving into the gray metal of the carriage. The figure in the raincoat leaned toward me. Though there were no eyes, I felt it examining me, my clothes, my hands, my life. "Ticket?" the voice from the speaker asked, while it still loomed over me. A heavy knot of panic began to settle in the pit of my stomach, and my throat began to constrict unbearably. I shifted and thrashed in the flowing metal of the floor, desperately trying to free myself from the treacherous trap. The man in the gray raincoat seemed to savor my fear. "I'm afraid you won't be able to get off at the next station," the voice answered the silent question in my eyes. I could not see it, but I felt with certainty that he was smiling as he said this. "A long journey awaits you." I looked out the window. There was neither night nor streetlights there. Beyond the glass, the same gray, peeling station wall stretched on endlessly, the one we were supposedly driving past but could never seem to bypass. We weren't going anywhere. We were simply becoming part of this carriage.